All right, it is now 3:30 and we are going to call to order the December 17th, 2025 board meeting at the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District. We have a quorum here and I'd like to welcome everybody who's here. I believe we have the county judge from Lee County today. There he is. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Then let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one day under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, item 2, public comments. We have one public comment. Frank Malinak has signed up to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Make sure that's turned on, sir. Good.
Okay. Hey, I just want to thank y'all for what all you do. But I wanted to come up and say a special thank you for Mike Simang for serving on this board and helping us out in Lee and Bastrop counties. Mike, thank you. How long have you served on this board?
15
years.
15 years.
Thank you for that.
And thank you for not reappointing me.
He threatened me if I tried to, so that's quite it. And thank you, Herbert Cook, for allowing me to reappoint you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
that is that they'll take care of that in January. But that's all I had. I wanted to say thank you to you guys. Herbert, how long have you been on?
2016, 17, something like that.
Well,
Years go by.
I know you're well worth the money we paid. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any public comments they want to make? All right, then we'll move on to item 3, public hearing. Public hearing regarding application by Aqua Water Supply Corporation for an operating permit amendment to withdraw 650 acre-feet of water per year from one well in Bastrop County, Texas. The proposed use of the groundwater is for municipal purpose. Aqua Water.
Sure, y'all are sick of me by now, so I apologize. All right, good afternoon, members of the Lost Pines Groundwater Conservation District Board and General Manager Hernandez. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. For the record, my name is Emily O'Leary, and I serve as the Engineering Manager for Aqua Water Supply Corporation. Aqua appreciates the district's time and consideration of our request to amend the permit for our ER3 well. Today, Aqua is respectfully requesting approval of a permit amendment to increase the authorized production rate for ER3. Currently, ER3 is permitted to operate at a production rate of 245 gallons per minute, or approximately 396 acre-feet per year. Through this amendment, Aqua is seeking approval to increase ER3's production capacity to 800 gallons per minute, or approximately 650 acre-feet per year, as detailed in the permit amendment application before you. This amendment involves both an increase in authorized production at the ER3 well and the decommissioning of an existing well within the same well field. Because there is not an established process for addressing those actions concurrently, this request is being considered through this public hearing process so that the well transition can be reviewed comprehensively and transparently. ER3 was recently re-drilled using current drilling technology and construction methodologies, resulting in newer, cleaner, and more efficient well. Based on the performance of the re-drilled well, Aqua is now able to reliably produce higher rates from the ER3 well than were previously authorized. In contrast, ER2 is an older well. It was drilled in 1979. I think we looked it up. And achieving comparable performance would require a significant investment to re-drill or rehabilitate the well. In addition, Aqua does not have adequate space on the existing ER2 site to meet current construction and setback requirements for a re-drill. Given those constraints, Aqua believes it is more efficient and responsible to consolidate production at the ER3 well and permanently decommission and flood the ER2 well. By decommissioning ER2, Aqua will be releasing both aggregate and instantaneous production capacity within the ER well field, which directly supports the proposed increase in production at the ER3 location. This approach allows Aqua to meet planned production from the well field without increasing the number of active wells or expanding groundwater development in the area of the well field. From an operational standpoint, this amendment allows Aqua to reduce reliance on aging infrastructure while also improving system reliability and flexibility. Aqua continues to experience growth within its CCN, and with that growth comes an obligation to ensure that adequate water supply is available. As a member-owned nonprofit water utility, our goal is to proactively plan for that demand in a manner that is both responsible and cost-effective. Optimizing production at ER3 while retiring ER2 allows us to do so while minimizing capital costs and keeping rates as low as possible for our members. We believe this request also reflects that balance and aligns with the district's goals of responsible groundwater management. In closing, Aqua respectfully requests the board's approval of the ER3 permit amendment as submitted. We appreciate the board's consideration and the district staff continued coordination on this matter. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. O'Leary? Thank you.
Thank you.
Gretchen Miller, have you, of LRE, conducted the examination of this application?
Yes, we have. Permit me
Please.
present.
Yeah, okay. Very good. And this. Going.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Gretchen Miller. I am an engineer with LRE Water, and I'm here today representing the board and presenting you with our assessment of the impacts of this well amendment. So to set the context, this is our PS 4-1 GMA 12 model that we have discussed at previous meetings, and this shows what drawdown throughout the district could potentially look like moving forward into the future. I've added an arrow here to show where this location is. It is a somewhat vulnerable area here in that remaining artesian head is predicted to be somewhat low because of its location relative to the outcrop. Right, so Aqua WC has asked for ER3 to be increased in to have an increase in production. And as mentioned earlier, this would go from 396 acre feet per year to 650 acre feet per year and have a higher maximum demand. But concomitantly, they will decommission the ER2 well, and this reduces the overall field capacity permitted by around 230 acre feet per year. The well is located near Elgin, and it has a total depth of 720 feet into the Hooper Formation. The picture up here shows the well shortly after redrill. The well pad there has been recently constructed. So nearby wells, you can see the decommissioned well at the very top of the graph. The star, the red star there. So this replacement well is situated somewhat differently with respect to the domestic wells that we're going to be discussing, which are listed on the left-hand side. These are within the 2,500 foot well spacing buffer that we consider for wells of this size. Pumping shown here, predicted or requested to go up at the start of next year. So we put this into the model as compared to what this well was for PS4-1. I should note at the same time in the model, we have decreased pumping for ER-2 because as part of your request, it's your policy to evaluate the whole well field at once making decisions. Okay, so we can see where our aquifer top is here. And the trace on the left is the predicted elevations over time. And you will notice that the aquifer has started to move into unconfined conditions at this location, as a result of pumping here and in neighboring areas and being close to the outcrop. The difference between the two simulations is pretty marginal. At the 2070 horizon, we really do not see all that much change in perspective here. And attributable drawdown only changes about 3.5 feet at the well. Again, this is because we're turning one off and turning another one on. So looking at what this looks like as attributable drawdown from at 1 year and 4 years, remember this is the drawdown that is attributable to change. And you'll see here we have a negative attributable drawdown. And a negative drawdown is kind of a converse thing to think about, but what it is actually saying is that we have a lower change in water level than we would have otherwise, right? So water levels are not going down as rapidly. And again, that's that less, the 230 acre feet per year less in production. Okay, so what does this look like? Again, more negative drawdowns. So even though this well in this production is moving closer to the wells in this area, there's still less of an impact than there would have been otherwise. I do note that this may be a new chart. I haven't shown this one before, but we've estimated the water above the pump when we had values for where we thought the pump was located. And we show the baseline and then this change. And you can see they're at 2070, this well could potentially have problems, but that path has already been set. You can see that the baseline decision made could possibly cause problems for well 6 there. And this could lessen them, but only to a minor degree. Our water balance changes, essentially with this lower pumping means more outflow to Burleson County in the model. And then some change in how water is being pulled down from the shallow flow system and up from the Simsboro layer and down from the Simsboro layer. All right, so in summary, this increase to the ER3 well and the accompanying decrease to ER2 does potentially impact the water levels, but they are all in a good or a positive way, potentially less drawdown at these wells. And then it changes vertical flows from the shallow flow system in Simsboro. So again, it's a minor change to around 2 feet of attributable drawdown at, within wells within the 2,000 foot buffer. Although it does still mean that well could potentially need mitigation in the future. But it might be a little bit longer. It might extend the time until it needs mitigation. With that, questions?
Questions, any board members? Good. Thanks, Brenda.
Welcome, thank you.
No questions, no further. Put on my party. Then we're going to go this hearing at 46 p.m. We're going to move on to agenda item 4 now, consent agenda. The consent agenda items are routine and they'll be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion or action on these items unless requested by the board director. These include the minutes of the November 19th, 2024 regular board meetings, financial report for November 30th, 2025, and invoices received and payments made greater than $15,000. Do I hear a motion? I hear a motion. Director Smith has moved that we approve this, and this was seconded by
Second.
Director Texter. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The consent is approved. We're going to regular agenda number 5. A, announcements. This is our last meeting of the year. As you heard from the judge, this is the last board meeting for Director Samang. It's my last board meeting. And next year, we will have 3 new members, 3 new board members appointed, 2 from Bastrop County and 1 from Lee County. New faces in the crowd next year. Any more announcements?
I've got an announcement with that. So we've got some recognition awards for you and Michael. I'd like to present.
Oh, yes.
So we've got recognition awards for Kay and Michael, who've been on the board on Kay for about five and a half years. And Michael Samang, 15 years of service as a director, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. Pictures? No, we're good? All right. All right, then, okay.
No, because now we have a fascinating presentation by LRE Water regarding surface water and groundwater interaction on the environment.
All right. Good afternoon. Thanks for asking me to come and talk about this again. I think I last did this probably about 2.5 years ago, and we were going to have a follow-up meeting, and it kept getting delayed. And I actually kind of think now we should probably delay it 1 more month, even though I'm already here, to further educate the new board members the next time. But I can do this anytime you want, and I can talk about this subject for hours. So I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes, present to you the most recent ideas, and see where you want to go with it as a whole. All right, so the real question is, does groundwater management, what you're charged with doing for the counties, does that affect surface water flow? Does surface water management affect aquifer water levels? Is there an exchange between groundwater and surface water? When and where does this exchange occur? Can we quantify this exchange? Do we have all the data that we need to do that? The answer is no. And then will more or less groundwater pumping affect surface water flows? Those are all the questions that everybody wants to answer with groundwater surface water interaction. All right, so you're all very familiar with your aquifers in Lost Pines. You know, you have a lot of surface area for outcrops of your aquifers. And that's really where the recharge happens. The greatest interaction between the surface water and the groundwater is going to be an outcrop area. So on this map, you can see the different colors. Everything that's a solid color is an outcrop area. So you have a large area in Bastrop County of the Carrizo Aquifer large, Jackson outcrop in Lee County. Basically, 75% of Lee County is an outcrop at the surface. 68% of Bastrop County is an outcrop. Now, technically, there's going to be groundwater, surface water exchange for those areas that are not in outcrops. You know, they're just not defined as an outcrop aquifer at the surface. Even the white area that's on the map is going to have some sort of exchange between the surface water that's flowing over it and the local ground. So almost everywhere, yeah.
With the creeks across the outcrops, that's going to increase water percolating from the creek down into the aquifer.
It could, or it could go the other way. The aquifer can be feeding the creek. And that's really the question. What we see a lot in Bastrop County, especially with the Colorado River, is that the river is being fed by the alluvial aquifer system. It's a gaining stream. As you go downstream in the Colorado, you're getting groundwater influx to the river. We want to keep it that way, ideally, right? If we don't want to change the environment too much, we want to keep it as a gaining stream. But I'm going to talk more about that as we go.
Yeah, because in Lee County, primarily the Yawak Creek.
Yep, that flow into Lake Somerville, yeah. So here is another map showing that same diagram of all the aquifers, but I added to it this time the boundaries of the Colorado alluvial aquifer. And these boundaries are not officially defined by the Water Development Board. I had to dig this out of the actual groundwater availability model for the area. It's probably the best mapping that we have available. It's not perfect, and you can see if you look in the graphic, I have a pointer. You can see if you look towards Travis County, where the upstream end in Bastrop County, there's no defined extent of the Colorado alluvial aquifer. So that's just a shortcoming at this point. We know it exists there physically. It hasn't been mapped and formally approved yet. And that's one of the things that I recommend someone do is to formally map the extent of the aquifer. Yes.
So, what is the process to get an alluvial aquifer recognized by the Water Development Board?
Oh, probably a lot of underhanded deals and deals to be changing again. No, I honestly don't know. It doesn't happen all that often. They just.
But I know some groundwater districts have a recognized alluvial aquifer.
Yep, the Brazos River has an alluvial aquifer that's recognized, and of course it crosses many districts. There isn't any reason per se that we couldn't push the Water Development Board to get a recognized aquifer here. It's certainly a possibility, and if that's the direction the board want to go, I can figure out how to answer that question for you better.
Okay, so would you recommend we do that?
Well, it gives you one more layer of things you have to regulate. And is there a need for it? Possibly. I think you'd also then have to coordinate closer with Fayetteville or Fayette County GCD and the other GCDs that are also being affected by the alluvial system. Right. So there's just further effort that needs to be put forward to do this.
The reason I think it's important is whenever we get to quantifying ecosystem services or the economics associated with groundwater, recognizing those Colorado alluvial aquifers, when you start bringing in fishing, recreation, and those things, then you really boost the economic values of those alluvial aquifers and consequently their protection.
Duck. There we go. There we go. All right. So we mentioned the aquifers and to have the surface water exchange with the aquifers, you need to know something about where the surface water is flowing. So here, everything in blue that you see over your jurisdiction, that is from a data set called the National Hydrography Data Set. It includes rivers, it includes ponds, it includes all surface water features, and you can infer drainage networks here. And what you can see is your your jurisdiction, your two counties, they span three separate surface water basins, primarily the Colorado River Basin, which is most of Bastrop County. And you have the Brazos Basin, which is most of Lee County. There's a little bit of the Guadalupe River Basin in the southern part of Bastrop County. We don't really worry too much about that for surface water groundwater interaction here. The main creeks and streams, you've got the Awa Creek, which flows into Lake Somerville, that drains essentially all of Lee County, and the Colorado River going through Bastrop County. Those are the big features, yes.
Okay, that looks like a lot of surface area. What percentage of the surface area of the Lee and Bastrop counties is water features?
Great question. I can answer it for you tomorrow.
Okay.
So I did put up something that, it sort of gets to that, right? You have an idea of how many named stream miles you have in your two counties. So we got over 1,200 miles of streams that are named, which generally means it's a perennial stream. It always has water flowing in it. Doesn't have to always have it, but the unnamed streams, almost twice as many miles, or more than that. Those are more ephemeral streams. They're not always going to have water flowing in. They'll get water after rain events, but don't necessarily have a constant base flow. And those streams, if they don't have a constant base flow, they're generally not connected to the local groundwater system. The other thing that I put on this slide is small water bodies. And this is a surface water feature. It's a pond. It's a lake. It could be a natural lake. It could be a man-made feature, but it is recognized as a water body in the National Hydrography Dataset. When I created this slide and looked at these, and this was a couple years ago, we had 18,000, almost 600 small water bodies in this area, right? And you put the area of those ponds all added up together is about 24,000 acres. That's actually bigger than Lake Somerville itself. Why is that an issue? Well, all of these ponds, they capture surface water that would run into them, and then that surface water stays there. Some of it evaporates, some percolates into the ground. So with these existence of these ponds, your stream flows going through your areas are less. They could enhance groundwater recharge. They could bring more surface water going into the ground and feeding the aquifers. But they could also simply just work as a detractor of surface water flow in your major rivers.
So that's whether they're man-made or natural?
Yes. And most of the man-made features, I shouldn't say most, there's a lot of them that are built on natural channels. So when it rains, people build a ranch, they want to have a nice pond. Rainwater flows into it, that captures, fills up their pond, and they're happy, right? That water doesn't flow downstream, so it doesn't become part of the surface water rights system excess, and it potentially could lower the water available for municipalities and other water methods. Big problem statewide. The question is, for the state, what do we do about this? And they don't know. And there's been a lot of legal back and forth and litigation and politicians arm wrangling and just wrestling with each other about how to deal with this. As a result of the last session, there was no definitive answer to what to do about these ponds. It's still something that's being talked about. LCRA is the biggest proponent of studying the ponds because they recognize ponds throughout their entire watershed being a big source of reduction in stream flow that they're seeing into their lakes. And part of the driver as to why they feel they need groundwater supplies and other things their customers.
Jordan, do you remember off the top of your head per acre what the average evaporation rate is for a water body?
No, but the Water Element Board publish that statewide, and they do it for all over the state, different rates and they do it by month. So, and they have all that information on their fingertips. But you're usually talking anywhere between 2 and 11 inches a month lost from all of these water bodies. That's which month of the year. So just to give you an example of the small ponds, you can call it a problem, you can call it a question. There's the topic of discussion, right? I mentioned the acreage of all these small ponds put together in your jurisdiction, about twice the area of Lake Somerville. Here is just a graphic zoomed in on the Giddings Airport. You can see everything that's in red is defined as a small pond. It's a water body. and this is not a really large area that we're looking at. There's just a large number of these ponds. The things that I circled in yellow, those are unidentified ponds. These are ponds that are not in this database that I calculated at almost 18,600 ponds. We missed some, right, when we did this count, and people might be building new ones. Each of these ponds, again, is capturing that surface water runoff, possibly contributing some of that water that is captured into the groundwater systems. That can be considered a good thing, or aquifer recharge, but it's reducing the stream flow. And as I mentioned, there's been a lot of talk about the impacts of these ponds. I've given a lot of these talks about this. You can see that we talked about it at TWCA in 2024. Now TWA, the Texas Water Association. KXAN did some studies on this about illegal dams up in the Highland Lake watershed and the impacts that those were having. So I bring it up to you here just so you're aware of it as an issue. Some of these ponds, in fact, a lot of them, well, I wouldn't say a lot of them, but they could be fed by local groundwater systems too. You dig out a quarry, and that quarry is going to fill in over time with groundwater. It just.
When was the 18,000? When did you come up with that number? How long ago was that?
That was probably as a result of a study I did during COVID time.
Does that have all of the Alcoa stuff?
Probably.
Does that include swimming?
No, it doesn't.
How big a factor do you think that would be?
Yeah, no swimming pools.
Well, I don't think people are using stormwater necessarily to fill up their swimming, right? They may do it just, well, certainly stormwater is going to flow directly onto the swimming pool, but they're not capturing water running off their land and correctly putting it into their pool. So I don't think the swimming pools themselves are a large issue, but if people are using groundwater sources to build the swimming pools, then we could quantify that volume. Sure. During COVID, I spent hours and hours and hours scouring Google Earth looking for these ponds. I was being paid to do it, so it wasn't very good a problem, but it's actually the perfect opportunity during COVID to do something productive without leaving my house. All right. A couple other thoughts. The question is, when it becomes really drought, if you're in a drought-ridden period, do we have more or less groundwater use? And so what I tried to show with this graph is the top graph is a time series of water levels in this monitoring well in the Carrizo outcrop, right? And so the blue lines is the water levels. You can see it ranges from at the top 200 feet below ground surface, and at the bottom is about 260 feet. So a decent range of water level change over this time period. I'm showing 2003 to 2024. And you can see it goes up and down. This is an outcrop. It's recharging. It's being used. But what I want you to look at is the bottom graph too. That's showing the drought monitor defined by the U.S. Drought Monitoring Service. On a weekly basis, they classify the type of drought that we're in. It's not just based on groundwater stream flow or precipitation records. They have a whole bunch of criteria where they use to define, is this an exceptional drought or is this abnormally dry or is it normal? The black bars are the exceptional drought periods. And so if you look at 2011, it was black most of the year, and that's where we had the biggest drop in water level in this well. So it just means that during these real drought times, people are using groundwater more often. It's going to go down, right? So the conclusion is well owners are going to pump more during drought, hot summers. We all knew that, but here's the definitive proof of that. Okay. Now into a little bit of groundwater surface water interaction theory. I'm going to show you three different cartoonish drawings. The top one is a gaining stream. And we mentioned this before, Colorado River is a gaining stream. And so what happens here is as the water in the river flows downstream, the flow increases. And that's because the water level in the surrounding aquifers around this is higher than the water level in the stream. So you have flow from the water table, from the groundwater system going into the river. Called a gaining stream. Colorado River under normal conditions is going to be a gaining stream. If it's always a perennial stream, if that's happening all the time, the stream always is going to have water in it. Most streams exist, even if it hasn't rained in a long time, and those are going to be groundwater fed, so they're going to be gaining streams as well. The sort of middle scenario here is a losing stream, right? But in this case, the water in the river is higher in elevation or pressure than water in the aquifer system. So water is going to seep out of the river channel and go into the underlying aquifer. And in this particular drawing, there's still a connection between that river and the saturated zone of the underlying aquifer. So there's good continuous water exchange from the river to the aquifer system. That's not a terrible situation. There's going to be a loss of water in the river, but it's feeding the aquifer system, and it can be a good source of aquifer recharge. The Colorado River, when you have high flow pulses, when it releases water for irrigation out of the Highland Lakes, you're going to get periods of high water levels in the river. That higher water level in the river channel adds additional pressure to drive that water into the aquifer system around it. And so you're going to push water into the surrounding aquifer system. Technically, you're going to be losing some of your stream flow, hardly noticeable a lot of the times, and especially the water that's pushed into the aquifer system during these high flow pulse events is generally returned to the aquifer system once that pulse recedes and the water level goes back down to the river. So it's sort of a temporary recharge into the aquifer system, unless somebody has a well and is pumping out. The third situation is the one that I would argue we want to avoid. We don't want to cause it, certainly, and that is the losing stream situation. So there we have a river system where water is seeping into the riverbed and it's essentially lost from the stream. There isn't a connection between the river itself and the aquifer system underneath. And you're not going to. This event is really one where the stream is only there when you have a storm event. There's a lot of surface runoff. It creates a stream channel. That stream is going to be losing water to the underground aquifer system. Eventually, when that rainfall runoff pulse goes away, all that runoff is flowed downstream, that stream is going to be dry again. There's no base flow contribution for groundwater. Nobody really wants that, certainly not for the Colorado River. It's going to happen for natural streams that are ephemeral, that are not always there, that don't have a strong aquifer system supporting it. And that's everywhere, but especially in the upper reaches of watersheds, you're going to see this more and more. So those are the three basic conditions. The question is, could excessive groundwater pumping turn a gaining stream into a losing stream? The answer is yes, it can. It very much can. And it has happened in a lot of different places across the United States. What would that look like? Well, let's say in our top graphic, we put in a pumping well, right? So here we've got an original water table where the water in the aquifer is higher than water in the river. Put in a well, it causes drawdown when you pump it. It lowers the water level. So the red line here is now the water level below that blue original water level. And you can see it now below the level of water in the stream. That means at that location, it's going to be potentially pulling water from the stream into the well. Now, studies that I've done on the Brazos River and probably similar studies here, we're going to indicate that most alluvial wells are not drawing water out of the river itself. They are drawing water out of the aquifer and preventing that water from the aquifer to reach the river. And so it's a nuance, right? We're not taking water from the river by the pumping, but we're preventing water from getting there in the future. Does that make sense?
That's a good question. We have quite a few sand and gravel operations near the Colorado River in our district. And when they go in and de-water the formations, how does that affect what you're describing here?
Well, are they?
Well, for instance, I was at a TCEQ hearing and they described what they were going to do over by Smithville. And they said, well, we're just going to pump the water out. And everybody was very concerned about that. But since the hearing was on air quality, we didn't really get to talk about it. So nobody really dug into some of the.
Well, most of at least the sand and gravel operations that I know, the mining operations on the Brazos that I've looked at, a lot of the times they have a really large water right. They use a lot of that water in their mining operations. That water goes right back into the river anyway, so it doesn't affect anything.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the same
I don't either.
area you're talking about.
Per se, it's.
Yeah. A lot of these sand and gravel operations, they don't want the water, so they pull it out and they will put it back into the system, usually just discharge it back into the river.
Are they discharging water? Lines of water quality.
They are, but most of these rivers, Colorado's cleaner than Brazos in terms of dirt content, but it's often not an issue. Using Brazos. Well, Brazos has a lot of PFAS usually and has a lot of dirt. And they take Brazos river water and use it for surface water supplies. There's a lot of distilling and settling bases. Yeah. All right, so here is a graphic that I took out of a study by R.W. Hardin. They did this study on the Colorado River alluvial system. Here they actually put a water level logger into the Colorado River. That's where you can see the river probe labeled there, and it was measuring water levels in the river. And they had 3 wells located along a line coming off the center line of the river, perpendicular to it. So they called the Vista location 1, 2, and 3. And they were measuring the pressures in each of those wells and comparing it to the water level in the river. What they found in general at this particular location, Vista 3 was the most distant well. It was about half to 3/4 of a foot higher in pressure than the height of water in the river, which means that there is a pressure gradient flowing from the aquifer into the river in this location. So it's going to be a gaining stream. It's not a huge gradient, but there is still some contribution from the aquifer system going to support flows into the river, this location. That was the conclusion that they got from this analysis.
We tried to cut that off. Obviously.
Sorry.
Happens all the time. So the other thing you can take away from this diagram is sort of a schematic of how the Colorado River system and the alluvial aquifer system may look in this area. You have this sand and gravel layer, as you say here, and then above it and below it are silt and clay layers. That's going to be just at this particular location. It's not uniform all the way through the Bastrop County along the alluvial system. The alluvial system for the Colorado River resulted from all the meanders and curves over geologic history that the river has. And so it's going to look different at each different location, different thicknesses, different extents. This is a reasonable representation, and this one is actually very similar to the same thing that was done on the Brazos River, right? The same ideas.
Well, when you say reasonable, it's just, but I mean, it's also just for this location. You can't really apply it to.
You can't, right? Ideally, we'd have similar monitoring setups all across Bastrop County, but that takes time and effort to set up. Further results of their study. So they did a detailed study, did some calculations, and they came up with a hydraulic conductivity of the alluvial aquifer of 4.9 feet per day, which is a decent conductivity value. If you apply that to Oak Bend, which is this bend in the river, quite large, 23,500 feet long, they calculated and reported it produced 186 cubic feet per hour of water going into the river. That sounds pretty good. If you calculate it, though, in cubic feet per second, which is how people generally measure stream flow, it's only 0.05 of a cubic feet per second, which is not much. When I made this slide, the river last week was at 300 CFS. So the 0.05 CFS is nothing compared to the stream flow of 300 CFS. So at least in this area, I would conclude that the groundwater flux to the stream is inconsequential. If the numbers reported are correct. And there have been past studies that say the conductivity is higher. It says there's a greater discharge to the stream. I still think that it's just not a largely significant fraction of stream flow, at least not in this area. All right. This is the relatively new part of this type of presentation. I went through, got it printed out here in this little folder, and I've been reading it the last couple of days. This is the 87-page petition that was submitted to the board here in October of this year. by environmental stewardship. It details a lot of decent science, looking at groundwater, surface water exchanges around this Colorado River alluvial aquifer. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I think there's good things here. I don't believe, if I had to testify in court today, I would say I believe some of it, but not all of it. And I think it needs updating and some additional work. But it's on the right track. It does present a good picture and a good body of work to aid the discussion. So what do I take away from it? There is a connection between the river and the alluvial aquifer. We already knew that, but they sort of provide some evidence for that science-wise. They said that increased pumping will reduce stream flow, and that made sense, right? They tried to say that the increased pumping would reduce stream flow by 25,000 acre feet a year and 40,000 acre feet. I don't believe that.
Chris.
It could be just some.
No, come on, get out of here. Get back out.
Somebody talking to their dog. I love it. Okay, so I think we can agree that pumping is going to reduce the stream flow. The question is by how much. And I don't think that they quite answered that. They did some scenarios in the various modeling efforts to quantify that. I'll talk about that in a second. Why is the reduced stream flow problematic? Right. Well, in the Colorado River Basin, the river basin itself is already over appropriated. There's already all the surface water rights have been allocated to water right holders, the LCRA being a major one of them, the irrigation districts downstream. And there's all sorts of arm wrestling and fighting about how best to manage the surface water of that region. Adding to it the idea that groundwater pumping could lessen the availability of surface water would just be another headache for somebody to argue over. Is it valid? Yes, I think it is valid, but it's again, I think it in level of priority, it's small compared to other arguments that can be made about how to use the existing surface water. And I'll explain that more. There is also, if you reduce the stream flow as a result of groundwater pumping, you're going to have reduced environmental flows. So this is flows in the river to keep the environment happy. And they look at that in two different ways. They look at it for flows going into Matagorda Bay, keep the estuary healthy and the oyster fisheries healthy and maintain that ecosystem. But they also want to maintain the in-stream flows for the Colorado River. There was a lot of studies on the blue sucker, although it's not talked about as much anymore, but that was the initial driver for in-stream flow studies for the Colorado River Basin. It's still important. It's still in part of LCRA's management rules, something to consider. They talk a lot about that in this 87-page document. What they don't talk so much about in this document is, okay, if you lessen the stream flow downstream of the Highland Lakes for whatever reason, what that triggers a lot in LCRA's management is they will release more water from the Highland Lakes to satisfy some of these environmental flows and also for other users that they have downstream. So in theory, you could reduce the stream flow because of groundwater pumping. And what would that trigger? That would trigger additional releases from Lake Travis to make up for some of that deficit. So if you manage to prevent the reduction of stream flow from groundwater, maybe you're ultimately saving water up in the Highland Lakes as well. So there could be an alternative discussion there that could be had with LCRA. There's all sorts of trade-offs that get taken into account when LCRA does its water management plan modeling, trying to assess who gets what water when. That would be one of them. All right, so here's some graphics from this report. What I wanted to show on this is they looked at two existing model types for groundwater and surface water. Groundwater model, groundwater availability model, the GAM, which we talked about. They focused on the GAM that was used in 2022 to set the DFCs. And as you know, we are currently setting new DFCs with an updated GAM. We're also creating a localized groundwater availability model for your jurisdiction. I think both of those new models should be used to update this analysis that they've done here, environmental stewardship analysis. In their analysis, they have a connection between the alluvial aquifer and so that was one layer, and there's also layer 2, which is the shallow Carrizo and others.
Oh, hey, out of here. No.
If folks online could please mute yourself if you're online. Thank you. Yeah, if I could see the screen, I could.
So what they did, they looked at the modeling, they saw where if you did more pumping out of the alluvium, how that could draw water from layer 2 up into the alluvium, how it could pull water in from the river into the alluvium layer. And then they did some calculations based on the pumping that was in that model at the time. How would the flow into the alluvium change? How would the flow from the alluvium into the river change over time? And that's what the red triangles are on that right graph. And so what I want to show here is the highest and lowest points on that red line, right? That's from 2015 was the high point to 2070, the low point. There's about a change of 17,500 acre feet there. That's different than the 25,000 and the 40,000 that they also studied in here. So rectifying some of these questions is one of the things that I recommend that get done at some point. We really want to look at this. But 17,500 acre feet a year is the reduction in stream flow, essentially, that you would expect as a result of all this groundwater pumping. What does that mean on a stream flow units basis, right? That's 24.1 CFS. Okay, now we're actually talking about a decent volume of water. This isn't 500ths of a CFS anymore. 24 CFS is measurable. It's noticeable. That would be approximately 1/12 of the flow when I made this slide, right? And so an appreciable volume of water, 80% of the stream flow would be coming, would be lost essentially. All right, but it's not clear that they focus this analysis only on Bastrop County. It could have been all the way for the entire extent of the alluvial aquifer. And so digging into those numbers again is just something that should be done to clarify all these questions that raised when I got them. Okay, so they did GAM modeling to quantify how much stream flow would be lost. Then they took that lost stream flow and put it into the surface water model. This is the water availability models used by the state, the WAMs, GAMs, WAMs, WAM being surface water. So this was done by a colleague of mine, Joe Trungale. He did this in 2021. He's well known in the Texas modeling community, knows what he's doing, but he's no longer in Texas and no longer doing work. He's moved to Colorado and doing fun things there. But he found, you can read his findings there, but really he just said that any reduction in stream flow resulting from increased groundwater pumpage is going to be unreasonable. He loves that word unreasonable because it's tied into the sound ecological environment that the state wants to keep having. And you can't have things that are unreasonable. Right? So his argument was, if the environmental flow requirements are not already being met, which you can argue sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, but overall they're not met 100% of the time. So if you lower the stream flow for whatever reason, you're going to lower the likelihood of meeting those environmental flow requirements, and that's therefore unreasonable, what you would say. Now, I have a comment that's different than that. I look at it this way. The LCRA develops their water management plan to regulate stream flow, and they consider, releases for environmental flow purposes. They have, as part of LCRA's firm water bucket, they have 33,000 acre feet a year that they dedicate to meet environmental flow requirements. They can release more, and they have rules in their water management plan to release more. But they say they're reserving 33,000 of their firm water for environmental flow needs. So their thinking is, in the future, when our firm customers want all of the water that we have to sell them as firm water, we're not going to release any water for environmental flows other than this 33,000 feet. Yes.
All right, about 12 years ago, the state legislature required all the major river systems and bays to determine in-stream flows and freshwater flows to the bays and estuaries. That was Senate Bill 3.
Yes.
Okay, that resulted in an analysis that set standards with regard to what kind of flows were required for the Colorado River.
Yes.
So how does LCRA get around that analysis and study provided by Senate Bill 3?
Great question. And the answer is They had older water rights than the study. Texas is under a prior appropriation system. If you have an old water right, a senior water right, the state can't come in and change it. Right? So if it didn't have a clause in there that says you can't divert if you're not meeting in-stream flow requirements, then you're not affected by those in-stream flow requirements. If I go, even if LCRA says, okay, I want to amend my existing old senior water right, do something new with it, that amendment process could trigger the TCQ to say, nope, you need to make sure that you meet environmental flow requirements. Why TCQ, or why LCRA doesn't want to amend any of their water rights. New water rights that come out now, they're few and far between, but they always have environmental flow requirements in them. I did a water right amendment for a client on the Brazos River up near Palo Pinto, and one of the requirements, they were not able to divert water if the Brazos River didn't have 17 CFS in it. That's right next to the dam that's for that area. But that was in their permit because they did the amendment.
Right, and it's out of the Senate Bill 3 analyses of the rivers that the sound ecological environment terminology that was required.
Yep. And that was great legislation. I liked it a lot. The intent of it was good, but I was originally hired by the Water Development Board in 2003 to do the in-stream flow studies, and none of us had any clue what was required to get a sound ecological environment. That was the biggest question. How do you even define what that is? So we spent for years trying to do it. We're still debating it, but we at least have some guidelines.
Well, I was on the PBES for the Nueces, and we found that Corpus Christi Bay did not meet sound ecological. Yep. Yeah.
So the other comment that I take away here is surface water is at least 10 times more important than groundwater to meeting these environmental flow requirements. It's just a much greater volume than anything that we're getting from contribution of the Colorado River or Colorado Bluegill system. So a couple other things to think about here. You can't read all of that document, but this is WAM modeling that was performed on the state's official WAM model, which is only valid from 1940 to 1998. The LCRA has expanded that model to include up to 2023. So if we were going to do this analysis again, I would use LCRA's water management plan model to better frame the questions that were trying to be posed here. The LCRA's water management plan actually reflects the operating procedures that LCRA manages against. So I think it's just a bit better approach than what Mr. Krungale did. But, the other thing that Mr. Krungale didn't clearly state in his application is he basically said, okay, we have flows defined in our model at Bastrop, and he took away a certain volume of water, assuming that was going to be the volume lost due to groundwater pumping. He didn't say if he took away that volume from Bastrop at every location downstream, what he would have needed to do to model that properly. It wasn't clearly stated, so without having it filed, I couldn't verify that any of his results were valid. But I think his approach is reasonable to try and answer some of these questions. All right, the other questions I looked at here was, we've said a lot that the Colorado River is a gaining stream. Is that always true? And why is it true? Now, in the WAM model itself, this is the state's surface water availability model, they have an input parameter that says how much water is lost between one given location and the location defined downstream. So they have a value to put in stream flow losses. And in a lot of the state, they have values in there that says that this is going to be a losing stream. The Colorado River downstream of Lake Austin, all the way to Matagorda Bay, has 0 losses. So it already is built to assume that there's not going to be any losses to the groundwater system. But it is not reflective of an increase in the stream flow, except for increases that are measurable at the 2 different gauges upstream and downstream. What do I mean by that? All right, so the red dots that you see on this map. So you're looking at Bastrop County and Travis County. The red dot that's on the Colorado River in Travis County, that is the location of the Colorado River gauge at Austin. Right? The red dot that's just south of that, that is the Onion Creek gauge. So Waters from those two creeks flow into the Colorado River, go into Bastrop County, right? The other red dot that's sort of the southern downstream end of Bastrop County, that's the USGS gauge at Smithville. So if you then looked at the difference in stream flow from Smithville versus the inflows to this box that we're creating at Austin and Onion Creek, you can get an idea of what's this increase in stream flow that we see over this area. Now I show this with the stream network in place, so you can see how much land area is actually draining to the Colorado River in between these two gauges. Quite a lot. And so where is the inflow, the increases that we're seeing at the Smithville gauge, where are they coming from? Are they coming from groundwater, or are they coming from all of this large surface drainage network? The answer is probably coming from both, but it's probably much more from the drainage network than it is from the groundwater. And we don't have enough stream flow gauges in Bastrop County to know for sure how much is coming in through our drainage network. And we really don't have a good handle on how much groundwater is coming in through the alluvial system. The graph that I show here, it shows the increase between the Smithville location downstream and the upstream locations. And it shows this every day for which I had data. So I think I was looking at 1940 to 2025 when I did this. And what I want to point out is there was about 10% of all these days where there was no increase. No measurable, noticeable increase there. It was just zero. They were the same flows. 15% is roughly the 24 TFS that Trungale and others calculated from their dam study. Right? So that means that the increase due to what they said attributable to the groundwater, 24 TFS loss, that's about 15% of the time. And not too much, but you can see there are other days on a log scale. So 100 TFS increase happened 60% of the time, or 40% really, less plotting. So it gives you an idea. There's a lot of variability in this increase, and a lot of that just comes from rainfall events falling over the watershed and causing variations in surface water flux into the system. Again, my opinion as a hydrologist is that surface water is dominant here. The groundwater contribution to the Colorado River through this stretch is relatively low. Doesn't mean it's not important. It would only be important if the stream flow in the Colorado River were low for a prolonged period of time, as we see in drought periods. Almost done. So do you want to create a groundwater management zone and manage the wells that could go into the Colorado alluvial aquifer? Do you want to manage those differently? Good. I think we have further study we need to do to quantify how many wells there are and the extent of the aquifer and a lot of those different things. But if you're looking at reducing those well pumping during low stream flow periods, and therefore ensuring that the stream is always going to be a gaining stream, that's a possibility. You could work that into your rules. I think you would need to do some pretty detailed stream monitoring that got started by R.W. Hardin and others. Ideally, they did it in one location. I'd probably want to do at least three locations across your basin. Those are the red dots there. 3 on the Colorado River, maybe 1 on Cedar Creek. And in each of those places, you want to monitor the stream flow height, but also monitor water levels in the aquifers. And the little note that I have there in blue is if you were going to regulate pumping from water wells in the alluvial aquifer, it'd probably be more impactful for wells that are located closer to these monitoring locations than ones that are further away. And it just becomes a detail that we have to work out as you consider how, if at all, you want to manage this area differently as a groundwater management. So that's all I had. There's a lot of different ideas here. Again, the science is good, but I think there's things that can be further developed and thought about. I would recommend rehashing both the groundwater and surface water modeling that was done as part of this petition to really understand the impact of at least using the best state of the science. But it's a good start.
Go back a couple of slides where you showed was that one. All right, would you recommend putting in, how many would you recommend putting in more USGS Giddings?
Well,
To get at the question that you posed, saying that there's not enough information between those red dots.
my first step, and I actually started to do this for you and didn't quite finish it, but I was looking at rainfall distributions across the county historically, trying to see, compare those to sub watersheds and where you've got perennial streams. I would look at a rainfall runoff model first, where I put in additional gauges. And that's something you can do mathematically on a computer. Expensive. Gauges are expensive to set up and monitor.
What are there, about 50,000?
At least, yeah. And there's not that many suitable locations for it. LCRA has 8 at various locations, and we can use those. Their data is available. USGS has some, so that's probably the other thing, that put LCRA's gauges on this graphic and map those and look at their watershed and see if we need additional ones. LCRA put them there for a reason, for flood control purposes more than anything. But use that data smartly. Again, thanks very much. I can talk about this forever. I've got all sorts of ideas. It's a question of what you as the board want to do.
Then you covered a lot of territory, Jordan. You got a lot of ideas and recommendations. Why don't you give us a list?
Okay. Just talk to my boss. She'll tell me, please.
Thank you, Dr. Fredens. We're back on the agenda. We're on the regular agenda, item 5C. Discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding application by Aqua Water Supply Corporation for an operating permit amendment to withdraw 650 acre feet of water per year from one well in Bastrop County to be used for municipal. Any discussion? Do I hear a motion? The application?
Move that we
Second.
We have a motion by Director Smith and seconded by Director Arzupi to approve the operating permit amendment as described by Aqua Water earlier. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously to approve the operating. Item 5D, discussion, consideration, and possible action on Aqua Water Supply Corporation request for extension of deadline for well completion under District Rule 5.5. Hernandez.
This is a request by Aqua to, for their timer well, to allow more time to do the drilling. This is very typical, like practically every well permit that we've granted has required an extension. We passed a new rule allowing 1.5 years. However, this permit was granted prior to that new rule. So they're just asking for an additional 6-month extension.
Do you have a recommendation on this?
I recommend that we provide the 6-month extension, yes. As we have to every other well that's been
And the
presented.
new rule allows.
Yep, it's consistent with our new rule. It's just that this permit was granted last year before the rule.
I'd make a motion to approve. Extension of the deadline. Well,
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Poole and seconded by Director Dexter to approve the Aqua Water Supply Corporation request for extension of deadline for well completion under District Rule 5.5. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously to approve the extension. 5E, discussion, consideration, and possible action on board compensation. I think this is Director Samantha territory.
Yes, if I'm leaving, expect me to. I think the board is undercompensated.
discussed this in finance committee. I move that compensation be raised to $200. From the directors.
That's a motion?
That's my.
Do I hear a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on Director Smang's motion to increase board compensation from $150 per meeting to $200 per meeting beginning January 1st, 2026.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion is unanimous. Okay, item 5F, discussion, consideration, and possible action on 2025 budget amendment. General Manager, please.
Yes, you all should have a copy of the budget amendment number 2. It was also in your packet, and there's a hard copy that's left on the dais. This is per our auditor recommendation. The last couple of years, we've been doing the budget amendments at the end of the year in December to true up our budget. Again, this is a recommendation that was given by our auditor to do this every December. And so we have done our best due diligence and looked at our crystal ball to try to determine these numbers as best as we can. There are a lot of redirecting monies to true up our 2025 budget. So I would recommend approval, if you would, for the budget amendment number 2 for 2025.
Question?
Yes.
The rainwater harvesting, the money for next year is budget, right?
Correct. $100,000. Claire,
I'm not sure.
I believe it was. I believe it's the same as what we had this year. We had more than enough, and that same amount, I believe, it was $100,000 was appropriated for next year.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve this budget amendment? 2025.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the budget amendment number 2-2025. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Budget amendment number 2-2025 passes unanimously. Okay. Now we're coming to item number 5G, and we're going to go into executive. Before we take that up.
Want to read it off
Oh, sure.
and give a time count?
Discussion, consideration, and possible action on general manager position. And the time is 4:43, and we're going into executive.
5A as well. Oh, 6A, excuse me, 6A.
Yeah, and 6A. And that executive session is A, executive session of the board pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551.071, or any closed session permitted by law regarding the district's pending or contemplated litigation. And B, executive session of the board pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551.071 and 551.074, or any closed session permitted by law regarding the following district positions: general manager. Okay, let the record reflect that at 4:59, we went back into open session.
We want to wait for Mr. Semang.
Yes, I did.
He's coming. All right.
Going to take up item 5G, the regular agenda, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action on general manager position.
But I would make a motion to accept Elvis Hernandez as our general manager according to the terms of the letter dated December 15th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to hire Elvis Hernandez under the terms of the letter dated December 15th, 2025, signed by Mr. Hernandez and by myself as acting president of the board. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Elvis Hernandez.
Jim, would you like a picture?
Number 5H, committee reports with possible board discussion. No action will be taken. Number 1, Financial Services Committee, Mr. Simonet.
Did not meet.
Oh, they don't think, okay. Governance Committee.
Meet. Governance met.
We met and we developed this agenda, which we've been laboring through. All right. Number 3, Infrastructure Committee.
Did not meet.
Number 4, Education Outreach Committee.
That mic may be off. Please check. Yeah, just hold it because it turned green. There you go.
Yeah, she's at the
Okay, howdy y'all. We had a rainwater harvesting 101 workshop. It was the last one of the year. Yesterday, we had 31 participants. We were very happy with the turnout for that. The room was packed. That was awesome. Coming up next year, February 6th and 7th, we're doing a Texas Well Owner Network workshop. It'll be a 2-day event. We're doing that with AgriLife, Lee County AgriLife. I think there's a couple other organizations that are doing that as well. Let's see. Updates on rainwater harvesting. I don't think there's been any changes since the last time we met, maybe a few more inspections, but I don't think we've approved of any more. The Well Watch program, fall checks are complete. Thank you, LRE team. You guys are awesome. We received water quality results back from the lab. I shared those with LRE and with each well owner. And then also the water level measurements, I've been sharing those with the well owners as well. And we plan to the water level measurements are already uploaded into the database, and I'll upload the individual water quality results in the upcoming weeks. I also included a 2025 social media performance report. Feel free to look through it if you want to. I also have a little infographic at the end that just gives some numbers, basic numbers on things. The overall thing that I got from assessing was that we have high views, which is good, but low interaction. That's one of my goals for next year, is to track better our posts and what people are interacting with, so then we can increase those interactions as well. Okay, and then finally, we had a high school, senior high school essay scholarship contest. This was our second year doing it. We had 8 applicants and we have 3 winners, and we're going to recognize them today. First, we have 3rd place, Sharon. She is from Giddings High School. You can come on up, yeah. She's from Giddings High School. Her essay was More Than a Memory, What Water Means to Me. And I just realized I didn't give y'all the essays. So I will email you the essays so you can read them. They were phenomenal. All of them told very specific stories, and they were all very moving. So I hope y'all enjoy them. Okay, 2nd place, Eric. He is from Elgin High School, and his essay is titled The Old Pipe. Okay, and then our 1st place winner was Teal Brockenbush. She's from Lexington High School, and her essay was The Rain That Raised Me. Hey, can I snap a picture of you with our winners? Oh. Okay. Y'all just want to stand up here.
Your last duty.
Thanks, y'all. Well, thank you, everyone. Okay, any questions? comments?
Yeah, clear.
All right, thank y'all.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Thanks for all your good work. Okay, item 5I, the general manager's report.
It was a management
Oh,
committee.
I'm sorry.
Management committee did not
Did not meet.
Sorry. Management committee did not meet. Okay, general manager's report, 5I.
Yes, general manager's report for December 17th. Basically, we've gotten 9 Form 100s for new drilling permits through the month of November. We had 0 Form 300s. LRE finished, as you've heard, they finished their fall well monitoring program on the 12th. Roughly about 88 wells were gauged and 44 had water quality tests done. And that's all been completed as Claire mentioned. Job conditions, according to the federal website, it's stayed about the same. Obviously, the rainfall has been limited, and so the rainfall amount is getting below average for now for Bastrop, and it's inching downward for Lee County. We are mostly in a severe drought. We are 100% in a severe drought for Bastrop County. That's remained the same, and the numbers for Lee County, 70% still in moderate drought, 30% severe drought. So that's has not improved. The GMA 12, there's 2 meetings that have been set up, one for January 23rd and for February 19th at the Post Oak Savannah UCD offices in Milano. The update is that the last meeting, the GMA 12 voted 4-1 to keep the DFCs the same and to continue with our model run that's called PS4-2, which keeps the DFCs the same. And I wanted to thank Judge Malinak, Bastrop County Commissioners, and the City of Lexington, the Mayor of Lexington, and the Lee County residents for all their GMA 12 letters in support of keeping the DFCs the same. That meant a lot. Thank you to them. Pending permits, we just got one just a couple of days back for the City of Lexington. They're looking to replace one of their wells in the City of Lexington. Austin Water and Wastewater, there's an update on that. With respect to their ASR project, three weeks ago or so, the Austin Water and Wastewater had voted unanimously to continue with the ASR agreement. However, the week afterward, the Austin City Council decided not to pursue ASR any longer. I'm sure everyone has heard about that. It was all over social media. It was a big thing. I would like to send some kudos out to the Bastrop County citizens. I believe it was because of their opposition and vocal opposition to the ASR that the Austin City Council had second thoughts. Also wanted to recognize Andy Weir. Since early on, back in April, when the stakeholders first met, Andy had been pushing to get a statistically valid sampling of Bastrop County comments, because at the time, Austin City Council had only received comments from Austin residents, and Andy Weir saw that and was astute enough to bring that to the attention that we needed to get Bastrop County comments in front of the Austin City Council. I think when they saw all the negative comments, that they had second thoughts about pursuing the ASR project. So kudos first and foremost to the Bastrop County residents and to Andy Weir for his insights on that. I still think that we need to pursue ASR legislation. This was just one salvo in this. I'm sure there'll be others that will want to come and pursue ASR in the Lost Pines. So I still think that we need to pursue legislation to help us in the future. I think that still is needed. Upcoming meetings, Region K is for January 16th at 10 a.m. in the LCRA Center in Austin. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 5J, consideration of future agenda items. Any director have maybe they may want to put on.
Election.
We'll have an election. We will have an election.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that for next month, we will not have a president, a vice president, or secretary treasurer to start the meeting until the elections.
That's a good puzzle for our lawyers.
Say, maybe we could have Natasha do it.
Our next board meeting is,
Bobby.
next board meeting is scheduled for January 21st. It's the third Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. right here at the same location. That's it.
That's it.
Does anybody have anything else?
How about, any sense, just setting me up.
Take it up with the lawyers. Okay, without further ado, we are going to close this meeting at 5:12 p.m.